Authorities have not announced what triggered the incident or whether there were casualties. Niger has been under military rule since 2023 following the overthrow of the country's elected civilian government by General Abdurrahman Tiani. The country has since expelled French and U.S. forces that previously assisted in counter-terrorism operations. Back home in Nigeria, gunmen have abducted Ambassador Bashir Issa Guzau, the Northwest youth leader of the Tinubu and Shettima campaign organization in Zamfara state. The incident was made public today through a post on X by security analyst Bakatsine, who revealed that over 30 armed men stormed Guzau's house in Guzau town and whisked him away in front of his wife. The abduction reportedly left the family in distress. Security agencies were immediately alerted, but efforts to locate the campaign leader have so far been unsuccessful. Makatsine questioned the continued insecurity in the state, highlighting the persistent threat of banditry in Zamfara. There has been no official comment from security authorities regarding the abduction. Meanwhile, the Lagos State Police Command has said it will charge 2 leaders of a protest on Wednesday, despite the reported largely peaceful conduct of the protest. It was there were reports that without provocation from the assembly, the police attacked protesters and journalists covering the event with gunfire, leaving many injured. On Wednesday, members of civil society group joined residents of Lagos waterfront communities, including Makoko, Owode-Oniri, and Owerri-Shoki, to protest ongoing demolition exercises by the state government. In a statement on X, the police public relations officer in the state, Abimbola Adebisi, said the protesters blocked Awolowo Way in front of the Lagos State House of Assembly for over 6 hours, causing disturbance of public peace, distortion of law and order, and preventing the general public from use and passage to end their means of livelihood and other medical emergencies. The police described the demonstrators as violent, alleging they carried a coffin and used a vehicle with loudspeakers to intimidate the public. Police say they used the minimum force to disperse the crowd with tear gas and reopened the road, claiming no injuries were recorded. However, civil society observers described the protest as peaceful and said police deliberately targeted both protesters and journalists. The command defended its actions as necessary to protect lives and property and warned that protests must not disrupt daily activities. The statement explained that investigations into the alleged roles of the arrested leaders are ongoing at the State Criminal Investigation Department, Banti, ahead of potential court charges. In a recent development, the Supreme Council for Sharia in Nigeria, SCSN, has officially declared its opposition to the leadership of Professor Joash Amupiton, a senior advocate of Nigeria, as chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC. During its 2026 annual pre-Ramadan lecture and General Assembly held in Abuja, the council may declare that the Muslim community would not accept the results of any election managed by Professor Amupiton. Sheikh Bashir Umar, president of the SCSN, addressed the assembly, stating that Professor Amupiton's presence at the helm of INEC poses a direct threat to the transparency of the 2027 general elections. He insisted that the council's stance is rooted in concerns over the chairman's past actions and personal views, which they believe disqualify him from being an impartial judge in the democratic process. Specifically, the council accused Professor Amupiton of authoring a legal document that alleged a Christian genocide in Nigeria. Sheikh Umar pointed out that this claim has been dismissed by the federal government, making Professor Amupiton's alleged position a form of divisive propaganda. The Sharia Council argued that such bias makes it impossible for the chairman to oversee a fair contest. He called on the professor to resign voluntarily or for the presidency to step in and remove him from office to protect the country's democratic integrity. In a swift reaction, a source within the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, dismissed the council's demands. The source claimed the commission would not offer a formal response to the allegations, characterizing the SCSN statement as a mere attempt to gain public attention. Still on the world news at 12 on Voice of the People 90.3 FM, wives of Nigerian officers detained over an alleged coup plot to topple the federal government has accused the government and military authorities of trying to weaken northern influence in the Nigerian military, according to a similar occurrence witnessed during Nigeria's return to democracy in 1999, as they alleged. While speaking to newsmen, they maintained that their husbands are innocent and were not planning to overthrow the administration of President Tinubu, as alleged by the government. One of the detained army captains hails from Osun State, while the squadron leader is from Bayelsa State. The remaining 33 officers are all from the northern part of the country, including 3 from the Federal Capital Territory. 2 of the officers, Brigadier General and Lieutenant Colonel, are from Nasarawa State, while 6, including 3 non-commissioned officers, are from Niger State. 3 are from Katsina State, including a colonel who was undergoing a course in the North African country. 3 of the detained officers, all lieutenant colonels, are from Kaduna, Plateau, and Kano State. 2 majors hail from Gombe State, while another is from Bauchi. Others come from Kebbi, Jigawa, Zamfara, Taraba, Yobe, Sokoto, and Adamawa State. Speaking at a protest, a spouse of one of the detainees alleged that her husband and others were indicted merely for having financial transactions with some already exposed officers and was never involved in any coup. You're currently listening to the World News at 12 on Voice of the People 90.3 FM. I'm now being joined by Barrister Ayo Ademiluye. He's a lawyer and a political affairs analyst who'll be giving us his own perspectives on the issues in the news this afternoon. How are you doing today, Barrister? How are you doing? Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, really glad to be on here this afternoon.
Good to have you here, sir. Let's begin with the unfortunate scenario of insecurity across the country. Gunmen, bandits, terrorists, whatever you want to call them, have unfortunately kidnapped. They've abducted the campaign youth leader of the Tinubu Shettima campaign in Zamfara State. His name is Bashir Issa Guzau. He's the Northwest youth leader of the Tinubu Shettima campaign organization in Zamfara State. Now, one thing about insecurity and really governance, economy, and everything that is an offshoot of it is when the people who support the opposition come out to say that whatever is happening to those who support the opposition will also happen to those who support the incumbent government. And then when they talk about this, we've seen it with insecurity. There was a time when a very highly placed individual within the APC, I think it was a local council chairman or a local government chairman or a House of Reps member, was returning from a meeting with the defense chief then, and he was ambushed and murdered. So one would ask, when it looks like it's coming so close to home, is that when the APC would act?
Thank you so much for that wonderful conclusion. It seems it's very clear now that the All-Progressive Congress-led federal government of Nigeria does not care a hoot about security of lives of ordinary citizens, except where dignitaries of that party, the lives of dignitaries of that party are threatened. So if we don't have this scenario in our hand, we will not be talking about insecurity in the first place. Don't forget that when the coup d'etat in Benin happened, it was at that time that the president flew a whole lot of military jets to Benin, and in fact, in a supersonic speed that can beat the speed of Adolf Hitler, to Benin. The press, the coupists, send the coupists, even the jets went as far as Guinea-Bissau before being brought down, by the Bissau regime, the military regime in Guinea-Bissau. This government, without being modest, is complacent about the security of lives and properties of Nigerians. And ultimately, our security lies in our hands. People have to form self-defense committees in the community such that we can defend our properties and our lives by ourselves. None but ourselves can defend ourselves. Thank you.
You're talking about Nigerians being involved in self-defense, right? But exactly, this is one question that's been asked over and over again. What kind of self-defense can Nigerians actually put into place that will be enough, right, to safeguard the communities? Although, while we're talking about insecurity, just yesterday in Borno State, almost 300 people who have been displaced by insecurity returned from other countries around us, from Cameroon and other countries. They returned to Gwoza in Borno State. Is that to say that the state has done something meaningful to curb insecurity, that people who have been away for over a decade, people who have been away for up to 11 years are returning to their communities?
Not at all. According to the Cameroonian authorities, because I read it, and this morning, we are sick and tired of Nigerians eating all their cassava, eating all their tomato and potato in that part of the world. But they themselves are also suffering. Don't forget that Pobia was just re-elected after some months ago, and hunger and suffering is also multiplied in that part of the world. Resources are becoming more and more scarce. That's why the Cameroonians just said, let's eject. They ejected Nigeria.
So the narrative that it is due to the fact that the insecurity has been reduced to the barest minimum by the government of Borno State, according to you, is false.
Completely false. That assertion is false because the Cameroonian government exercised their right under international law by repatriating Nigerians. Repatriation is not a peaceful and voluntary movement. It's a forceful movement in every way. Nigerians were dragged, were hauled all over Cameroon, and thrown back to Nigeria across the border. So that was not in Borno State, as you have said, in the earlier submission, you would have that. In fact, kidnapping, banditry is still taking place. Now, on the issue of self-defense, how Nigerians really organize self-defense? The reality is that there must be those committees of self-defense in which neighborhood workers and youth in the neighborhoods can democratically discuss who and who will bear arms. It's not a moral issue. It's not a moral issue in any way. Who and who will bear arms, who and who will control arms, and that discussion can commence. If that discussion commences, you because people democratically determine that kind of thing. Remember there was civilian JTF at a particular point in time when people when they under the intensity of the Boko Haram onslaught, people organized civilian joint task force. Those are examples of self-defense committees that can be organized, and they can bear arms. The civilian JTF bore arms, and they're able to engage terrorists and other dissident elements, close and put them down. So that's the way to travel for the ordinary workers and youth in those communities.
All right then. While we're talking about insecurity, just yesterday the Nigerian government signed an 8-point MOU with the Turkish government, and one of them has to do with collaboration on security. This is one of the points that was raised by Islamic cleric Sheikh Gumi, who says that is one country that Nigeria should be liaising with and not with the United States. But with all of those liaisons, with all of these collaborations with the US, with Turkey, with any other country that Nigeria may be thinking of having a collaboration with, are these enough to curb insecurity in the country, or are we just going around in circles?
Not at all in any way without curb insecurity. Don't forget that Turkey itself, under Erdogan, has seen a lot of trouble. We saw what happened. The Turkish, there was even an recent report of attacks on a section of the Turkish population by Erdogan. We are seeing attack on democratic rights by Erdogan himself and all that. So the recent Turkish Nigerian talk on insecurity and all that will not even have the security situation in any way. Now, in any way, Sheikh Gumi trying to say Nigeria should collaborate with the likes of Turkey and Co. other than US is just talking with his tongue in his cheek. Don't forget that the same Donald Trump that employed, a pseudo-religious slogan of defending Christians in Nigeria went to Venezuela to pick up Maduro like a potato. So is Maduro an Islamic terrorist? The answer is no. Is the Christians in Nigeria the only victims of terrorism and banditry? The answer is no. It is what is called fascism that is emerging. Trump is a fascist. What is happening is that he is trying to more or less control global order in totalitarian manner. All of us, both Christians and Muslims, free thinkers and English and all kinds of religion, people of all faiths, we have to join hands together to fight Trumpism and fascism in the first material particular. In the second material particular, it's now Erdogan. If Erdogan now the new savior of Nigeria, the answer is no. As you have earlier analyzed, Turkey itself is caught between the straits of the Eurasian crisis. The others behind Turkey, the entire EU, caught in very deep economic crisis. Then over GT across the sea in Asia, the likes of Russia up to China and the rest of them, with the ongoing global imperial conflict in Ukraine. So all of these things point that eventually even a physical confrontation between NATO and Russia, ultimately places like Turkey and Co will become military conflict zone. So how can those kind of people now be the savior for us in Africa and in Nigeria? None but ourselves, ordinary workers and youth, organizing ourselves first and foremost against all the oppressors in our own country, displacing them altogether and all their surrogates in terrorism and all of these things, and ultimately putting up a genuine egalitarian working class government can begin to be a beacon of hope for other people in Africa and across the world.
All right, Barrister, let's come back to Lagos. Yesterday, the police were accused of firing tear gas and even live bullets at protesters who were demonstrating against what they called illegal demolitions in Makoko. Not just Makoko, of course, you know that the one that has to do with the war in Shoki has been going on since last year. There were also demolitions in Owodo Niri. Now, while this was going on, the police allegedly fired tear gas at the protesters and even live bullets. But of course, the police has denied that. But we saw videos of people running. In fact, there's a particular video of, those people that sell puff in glass boxes, and they were running and that particular box fell. And, one would really see how the people who are running while that fell and broke can actually run on broken glass and then get injured. We actually saw a video of a man who had to be carried because he had a very bad injury on his leg. But the police has denied being violent to the protesters, insisting instead that it was the protesters who were violent, saying that they carried coffins through the streets of Lagos. The police is asking, what does that mean? Are they wishing someone death?
Thank you so much for that wonderful question. By the way, I'm the lead counsel the matter of the enforcement of right to shelter of the multiple evictees. We won a judgment before Honorable Justice Gazi of the Federal High Court, which restrained Lagos State government, in particular the Nigerian Police Force, from further evicting. But despite this valid and sustained judgment, the Lagos State governor, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, cleared his fans in cahoots with the Nigerian Police Force to repress peaceful protesters who are from Makoko, from Shoki, from Bariga, and even we have seen evictions as far as by 12. More than 12,000 people have been displaced. Lagos today has become the cynosure of displacement, internally displaced persons. More than 50,000 people are either living on the sea, across the ocean, over behind the Atlantic. But that does not in any way crash the scheme of the government, who lives, of course, in a self-constructed paradise far away from us. Now coming to the response of the police, we are now in the days of internet technology. Videos don't lie. We all saw the videos, people being injured, and that's where they lied also about Lekki massacre. We were the legal team that got the tribunal, the NSAS tribunal, to say there was a massacre at the Lekki to get. So despite all those horrendous evidence and everything. What happened? Everybody died on the 20th of October 2020 in the so-called white paper. Those lies cannot, be consultation with videos. Now, coming to the issue of coughing, everybody have a right to movement, right to creative citizen. Eventually, what they are really afraid of is the mass uprising of the magnitude of the answers that happened 6 years ago. Don't forget that between that stretch between Ikeja under bridge and Alausa Ikeja was where the first 3 days of the answers took place. And in fact, their route here was that those protesters are going to converge at that same entrance of Lagos House, Alausa, to occupy the place. And that was the beginning of the answers movement in late October, early October 2020. So the fear of the answers movement is still ringing very loud in the heart of the Nigerian ruling class, because overwhelmingly they declared a war on all of us on by 6:50 by 12 midnight on 20th of October 2020, wherein they said they blowed the military bugle. So the military bugle was sounded not as a war against Ghana or against Cameroon or against Mali, but against the ordinary workers and youths in this country. And since that 20th of October to now, bullets upon bullets, armor tanks were lined up at Alausa yesterday. As we are speaking now, 3 of those activists are facing charges, very nebulous charges, before Yaba Magistrate Court. We want to see how far the charges of the police will go under Goro's trial. But it's clear as Monday that we are now living in what almost ups the philosopher called Lagos is now a city, a state of nation, where life is not only British, but very, very daring and short.
That's the Thomas Hobbes concept of state. We see this being quoted again and again by political analysts and by like yourself. Is this something that you really believe in? Because one could say that we are enjoying at least a moderate measure of democracy in the country, whereby these are what one could call isolated cases. Anyone who was not at the protest ground yesterday could not have said, oh, they were being oppressed by the Nigerian police. You said you are representing the people who have these issues. Was there any point where the protesters became violent yesterday?
Videos themselves, there was nobody carrying any weapon, there was nobody carrying anything, and all that. Now, the reality is that what is at stake is the unleashing of terror. And all that. I know what to say. Democracy not only means voting or ballots, elections, and all those things. It means access to everything a reasonable human being can afford. But is that what is happening in Nigeria? The bloody answer is no. We are not in a democracy. We are in a civil rule, and a dastardly civil rule in which terror can be unleashed on protesters. And in fact, according to the World Poverty Clock, Nigeria is the world's poorest country in the world, 98% poverty. And according to the world's leading cities to live in index, Lagos is the second worst city to live in after Damascus, after the war-torn city of Damascus under Sahara. So what are we talking about? We are just trying to paint a paradise out of nowhere, where people are living in chronic, serious poverty. In this Lagos, 98% of people who live in Lagos are poor, according to the World Poverty Clock, and they live less than $1 per day, according to the World Bank. And then you have a tiny percentage that appropriates $18 trillion in a year. And Lagos State government, of course, the governor and his super rich friends, superintendent, building big, luxurious estate for themselves. They demolished the government about 7-8 years ago and turned it to Parawinku Estates. They demolished Oworosoki just a few months ago, and they turned it to Oworosoki Oceanfront Luxury Estate. In fact, we are here for a long drawn battle. I want to assure them that the barricades have just opened up. They're going to fight this battle to the very last. The super rich can't have the Lagos for themselves. The super poor also give accounts at the barricade.
Oh, all right then, Barrister Ayo. Let's move on to another situation. This has to do with the 2027 elections. The Sharia Council has said they want the INEC chairman to be removed. They said they will reject his conduct of the 2027 elections. They do not see him as someone who should conduct the elections. And this is because they claim that he is taking a position that is a form of divisive propaganda because he authored a legal document that alleged a Christian genocide in Nigeria, which the federal government has rejected. What's your take on this?
Well, that's an assertion. That's what the test is. I'm a legal practitioner. I'm not trained to speak on assertions and assumptions that have not yet been tested or verified. What I know for a fact is that Professor Amukita is coming at a time to depend on a very unbalanced and undemocratic electoral framework. Despite all the amendment made to the Electoral Act 2022 as amendment, there are serious lacuna in that Electoral Act that are manifested in different proportions during the course of the 2023 elections. We saw the issue of cars, camera, with the uploading of election results and all that. So the only way forward is to ensure that first and foremost, the right form a political party first subjected to the Independent National Electoral Commission. People should be able to form parties even within neighborhoods, within streets, within any place. In other advanced capitalist countries, you just notify the post office that you are forming a party. It's as simple as that. When you have that kind of a broad-based and open electoral space, you're able to engage the electoral space appropriately so that land grabbers, property speculators will be the one in power perpetually in our country.
All right then. Because of your time, Barrister Ayo, I want to quickly talk about the alleged coup plotters in the country who have been detained. Now, the wives of these detained officers came together to stage a protest. They claim that the coup plot is fake, and they allege that President Tinubu is only following what they called Obasanjo's precedent to cripple northern influence in the military. Now, some of them claim that their husbands were not indicted for being part of a coup plot if it is real, but that they just had financial transactions with some already exposed officers and were never involved in any coup. Now, the bulk of the people who were alleged to have been involved in this coup plot are from the north. Just two of them, one is from the south, the other is from the southwest, that's Oshu and Bayelsa states, but the others are from Zamfara, Taraba, Yobe, Kogi, Kebbi, Jigawa, Sokoto, Adamawa states, and other Bauchi, other states like that. So these people are saying that the coup plot is fake. Is it possible that the Nigerian government, even though they denied it the first time, is it possible that they will come up and say, "Oh, let's just lie that there was a coup plot," when there was none? With these wives coming out to say that there was no coup plot, but that the president wants to cripple northern influence in the military, or is this their emotions talking?
Thank you so much for that wonderful question. You see, Nigeria have had a history of coups and counter coups, good coups, personal coups, and all that. And one interesting thing about the Tinubu administration that is only civilian, does not have any militaristic background. Tinubu rose from grass to grace, and he was never part of the military. He was part of the anti-military struggle and the rest of it. And those are the narratives with which he power. Now, having said that, the fact that the coup attempts are always kind of very atrocious regime and administration cannot be ruled out. Whether or not the coup plot was heard is the question that only a proper trial court can determine. That is why we call for the open trial of so-called the persons arrested for the coup plot. The open trial that be open to Nigerians. If there is going to be a military tribunal, it should also be open to Nigerians, in which you can even listen to their testimonies and all that. Having said that, there's no time when a coup plot is made, that the national question will not rear its ugly head. The ethno-religious complexities of Nigeria will definitely manifest. As we, even from the ethno-religious analysis of the persons who have been arrested thus far for the failed coup plot attempt, there's anyway, we saw that national question is evident. Most of them more than so the agitation of their wives that this another quote unquote abduction being executed cannot be ruled out because the reality is that if they are southerners or even if they are southeasterners, they will say, this is the way the southeastern people to implement their Biafran agenda. If in case they were South Southerners, so okay, that is the way they want to bring elements like Jonathan back to power. So there's no way a coup attempt, whether successful or unsuccessful in Nigeria today, will not come under a religious scrutiny. But on the whole, we call absolutely for a very open and rigorous trial that will be viewed even live on TV and on radio, in which we can work ourselves the testimonies of this. Because if you know from all the history of coup Nigeria, most coup trials of so-called coup plotters are always done in secrecy. If you look at what happened with the other Oka coup in 1991, it was heard in music and you just snap the picture of the people in chains, of the arrested person in chains. They of course very beaten and already arrived out of proportions, and they cannot even tell the world their stories. You understand? But we are under a civil rule now. There's a constitution in the country now. We call specifically for a trial by a competent court of jurisdiction. I know they will be tried by the ministry, but of course they still have the right of appeal to the federal high court as a competent court of jurisdiction. We want them to be brought to open court in which Ghanaians, including citizens like ourselves, we are here for Moses Maps, what is inspired, what is the testimony of this person arrested for coup plot.
Thank you so much, Barrister Ayo Ademiluyi, for joining us on the World News at 12 this afternoon. But before you go, with these anti-demolition protests, because you mentioned that you are representing some of the people who are victims of all of this, what is really going on? What's the court saying? What are the people planning to do?
Well, the matter is still in court. I cannot present the court. And that's now the proceedings in the pre-arrest activities is going on at the Yaba Magistrate Court. I believe your team will also make it down to the court to also hear what the court will say. So let us await the rulings of the court and judgment of the court. Thank you.
All right, then. Thank you so much, Barrister. Enjoy the rest of your day. We appreciate your presence, your analysis. You have been listening to the World News at 12 right here on Voice of the People 90.3 FM, where we've been having a conversation with Barrister Ayo Ademiluyi on the issues in the news this afternoon. But just before we wrap up, let's take a look at the top stories again. You heard that mysterious explosions and gunfire were heard near Niger's international airport. Gunmen abduct Tinubu Shettima campaign youth leader in Zamfara. Lagos police to charge protest leaders in court, and Sharia Council demands INEC chairman's removal, vows to reject 2027 elections. And that is a wrap on the World News at 12 on Voice of the People 90.3 FM. My name is Chioma Innocent. Good afternoon to you and thank you for listening. Do stay tuned. Matters will come your way by 1:30 p.m.